Thank you, Oleg. So now we're going to continue with our next session, which is on equal opportunities. Sorry, we're streaming while also sharing here. We're also seeing them live. It's a little bit of technology in between. But yes, so I'm going to present to you the moderator. Her name is Constance Bossan. She's from France. She's part of SMPA, the Swedish Network of Postdoc Association. She is a postdoc at the Karolinska Institute and also has worked in advocacy now for like 2 years together with me and others here present. So please, Constance, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so hello, everyone. As Laura said, my name is Constance, and today I have the pleasure to host the panel on equal opportunities. For that, we have 4 distinguished speakers here on site, and we should have one more online, but I can't see her yet.
She's on the technical front.
Yeah, so we will have her soon. Maybe I can start from the right side presenting our speakers. So we have Sarah Pilja, who is the equity officer at Eurodoc and also the Eurodoc representative for the Conference of International NGOs at the Council for Europe. Thank you, Sarah, to be here. Then we have Gustav Eriksson, who is a PhD candidate at Chalmers University here in Gothenburg in Sweden, and also vice chair of SFSDK. We have Erdinç Zinger, associate professor at Karolinska Institute, and you're also one of the co-founder of the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion office at SciLife Lab at KI, and Jan Tellinger, that is acting vice chancellor at University West, also in Sweden. So thank you all. And we will have Monique soon, so I can present her soon. She's from the Netherlands and will also have a very nice input, hopefully. With that, maybe I can ask each of the speakers to have a little word or preliminary presentation of the topic from their point of view. Sarah, do you want to start?
Okay, hello everyone. So I'm sure someone is bringing data, so I'll not speak about data. So I come from humanities, so I will try to bring a bit of more maybe anthropological perspective. So I will start saying that discrimination of any kind is a cultural issue and a matter of power. So in organizations, we need to work both on the organizational culture we have and on the organizational structure that derives from that culture and vice versa. So they're interrelated. Of course, no, it's tricky because organizations are very difficult to change. Once something has a structure, it's really, really, really difficult to bring the structure out because we have many things. We updated the statutes of Eurodoc and it took a long process just for make small changes because, of course, we need to check that everything keeps in place when we change things. On the other hand, culture changes more quickly, but in this specific issue with discrimination, this is so embedded that it's really difficult to get out of it. So even myself, that I'm really deep into studying these type of issues, and I'm trying to get super aware of everything, sometimes I find myself slipping into some type of discriminatory behavior or speech or habits or whatever. So it really takes a lot of time to get self-awareness on one side, and then to know that there is a strong resistance to change. Because again, coming to power, if we change the structure, we should change the distribution of power and control the people who control power. Now, we can take 2 different approaches. What we have been doing in the last decade, I think, in the higher education area is try to share power. So try to get more women into decision-making bodies and trying to do the same thing with other types of vulnerable categories. What we're not trying so hard is to shape a different type of community where we share power together. And so it's not a matter of losing power to give that to someone else, but to govern our higher education system together in a more democratic way. So I will just say that, and we can go over in a while. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Sarah, for these first insights. Very, very nice. And Gustav, maybe do you want to follow up as a doctoral candidate,
Yes.
maybe?
Being from a University of Technology and engineer, I might, is it close enough now? Okay, perfect. So being from a University of Technology and engineer in my background, I might add some more numbers, but not that much more. First of all, I think we all agree that it's important to work towards equal opportunities in academia, but I also think we should remind ourselves a bit why. There are probably as many reasons as there are individuals here, but the ones I usually think about is that academia is important, and for that reason it's important that we have equal opportunities in academia, because we do important stuff and we will generate knowledge and find solutions to today's problems, and we need to ensure that all perspectives are present in that process to ensure that what we come up with in the end is has taken all perspectives possible in consideration. So there's a quality aspect in terms of the output of academia. And there's also a democratic aspect of it, because academia is one important institution in our societies, and it holds some power. It sets the tone for what's being discussed in society. And for that reason, it's also important to ensure as good representation as possible in academia. And I also usually like to mention that it's the right thing to do as well, because if we have the values that we should strive towards equal opportunities and that it's important, we should also live by our values and act in a way that upholds them and reproduces them, and be prepared to put in the effort to act in a way that act as we want to teach and do as we say. Being from a technical university, we have lots of problems with the gender equality. And a few years back, I was the president of the student union at Chalmers. And at that time, we had less than 15% women among the full professors at the university, which was the lowest number in Sweden. And we're still very low and probably among the lowest. But at that point, a few years back, several efforts were initiated and ongoing to improve this situation. For example, the university dedicated 30 million euros over a 10-year period to recruit more women into the tenure track positions. And this effort, I guess it's halfway now, and we will hopefully in the future see some results from it, and whether or not it was successful and which part of it was successful and so on. So there will be lessons from it, I hope. But that in itself doesn't really fix the overall situation within academia. So if we are in a situation where the pool of academics overall doesn't represent society as a whole and doesn't look the way we want it to look, then universities competing each other for the underrepresented groups doesn't fix the entire problem. So I think it's important that we also consider to make sure that we have a population at all levels, starting at the undergraduate levels, that represent society, and ensure that for each next level, going from bachelor to master and to PhD and so on, we retain this distribution and the representation that reflects society as a whole. And if we manage this, then we will eventually reach the situation where our professors represent society in a good way. So, and that's of course a long project and something that would take a lot of time. But I know that in the technical departments, there's efforts in order to ensure that the recruitment of undergraduate students is more directed towards the underrepresented groups. For example, we have mechanical engineering programs, electrical engineering programs, computer science programs that historically and currently have a very low number of women students. And there are deliberate efforts to attract more of these underrepresented groups. But as far as I know, we don't have similar efforts when it comes to ensure that we retain this and have it at the PhD level, for example, when recruiting new PhD students among the newly graduated master students. I feel like these sort of efforts and initiatives are lacking, and that it's also lacking when wanting to recruit newly graduated PhDs for postdoc positions and so on. So we need to have this effort throughout the entire career ladder. And in order to also retain people, I think this also relates to other factors. And the previous panel talked a bit about the socio-economical aspects that within academia, we see an overrepresentation of children of academics. And this is also one of the parts that we should consider. Why is this the case? And I think this is a bit related. So we that are here and within academia, we obviously think what we do is very important and that academia is at center of everything. And I think that this can make us a bit like complacent and not consider the importance that we actually inform about what we do and what a career in academia could be, what it entails. Because for those that haven't grown up, children of academics, they don't know these things, they don't see it this way. So here we need to actually be better about informing what it is. And so there's a lack of information, and I also think there's a perception about how it is like working in academia, which is more or less founded in reality. There are working environment issues and so on in academia. And in order to address these, I mean, we want to address this perception about academia by actually improving academia, I would say, and improving the conditions to work in academia to make it more attractive for more people. And of course, when we discuss equal opportunities and so on from this aspect, we can't avoid discussing the prejudice and bullying and harassment that occurs. And this is like a big hurdle that it makes people not want to pursue careers in academia, and it's definitely something that we need to address. And I know there's been efforts also in the last years since the fall of 2017, when we had the Me Too movement. I know a lot of universities, including my own, initiated efforts to deal with this in various ways, but I think that there are still a lot of things to go, and I know that this is the case. So yeah, those are some of the things that I think about when approaching this subject, and I'm sure we will dig more deeply into many of them in this discussion that we will have. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gustav, and thank you for maybe bringing up some concrete examples of how our university can try and tackle these issues. Erdinch, maybe you want to go next?
Yes, if you can.
Maybe give me 1 minute technical fix.
Yes. Meanwhile, maybe I'll introduce myself. My name is Erdinch Sezgin. So I'm a assistant professor at Karolinska in Saalach Lab. And as Constance mentioned, I'm the co-founder of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion committee. And today I'm going to basically share a few data, since we are life scientists, and some experiences that we had over the past years as the diversity committee, and what challenges the researchers face in the Swedish academic environment. So this data that I'm going to show today is basically mostly life scientists in Stockholm area. So it could be applicable in general Sweden and Europe, and probably worldwide, but still it's a disclaimer. So maybe we go to the next slide. So I think this audience definitely doesn't need convincing that diverse groups are definitely successful. This data was published a couple of years ago for business, but this is definitely valid for science as well. Diverse groups definitely outperform. We can go to the next slides. But I think one point that we actually usually ignore to discuss is the inclusion. I think diversity doesn't bring a good environment itself. You can make it diverse, but if you don't make it inclusive for the diversity, I think that environment becomes hell for the diverse groups. So that's why I think it's really important that any academic or non-academic environment not only ensures diversity, but inclusion comes with it. And this data is also from business, but it's very clear that actually inclusion doesn't follow the diversity. It is very clear from the terms that we use. They actually set our mindset that we tolerate, for instance, diversity, which is not really accepting, even appreciating the diversity. That's why I think it's really important that we also discuss about inclusion. We can go to the next slide.
Yes.
If we can, yeah. So I think inclusion, especially both diversity and inclusion, there are a lot of challenges that we can discuss, but a few things that I faced last couple of years, seeing the examples of what creates it. Of course, in academic environment, there's this competitive dream of academia, which brings a lot of bad feelings and a lot of unconscious bias that people think that they don't have, as mentioned before. It sometimes sounds a bit ridiculous that you hear people saying that I don't have unconscious bias. That is exactly the point of unconscious bias. And this is very easy to understand. People have unconscious bias when they talk about their gut feelings, how they trust their gut feelings, which is unconscious bias, which is just past experiences forming your very lazy decision-making. And I think this decision-making process could be discussed a bit more in terms of ensuring the diversity in our selection, as well as forming power-making committees and bodies. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the data part I want to show you now. We had a couple of meetings with group leaders, doctoral students, early career postdocs, master students. And first we asked the group leaders, PIs, professors, what they think influenced the experiences of their group members. What is the main diversity, inclusion, and equity aspect? And by far, of course, you can see nationality and gender ethnicity came first. This is what the perception of the PIs to ensure the diversity would be. The others, there are many other things that we probably discuss later, but we can go to the next slide. But then when we asked the students, PhD students, master students, and postdocs, by far the first point that came that they want to discuss as the diversity and inclusion aspect was the mental health. So of course, it is not itself maybe a pillar of diversity. People don't see as pillar of diversity, but it is a very important pillar of inclusion and a very big consequence of non-diverse and non-inclusive environments. So I think we started organizing many events around mental health, and actually we shifted all our focus to mental health because it was a burning thing in the academic environment. Next slide, please. And we also asked what affects mental health of PIs, professors. And this is, of course, we can also discuss this later, but it was mostly funding and this competitive environment, basically, that we create ourselves and then we suffer from it. So the last question that we asked for the most of it was a diverse audience. What do you think would help people feel included in the group, in the scientific environment? There were many many answers, of course, very good insights. But one of the things that were basically, if you have an international group, if you have diverse group, you should also make your activities diverse, your behavior diverse. And most importantly, you should have openness to discuss diversity and inclusion aspects. I think that was it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting survey. And I wonder, maybe you can discuss later if you should focus on inclusion first or mental health first. But Jan, would you like to come next? Yes, I was going to do that. Can you just check if we see the slide properly online? Okay, I think you can start, Jan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, my fellow panelists. I'm gonna say something that you already said, but also something about my university and how we act locally in University West. Högskolan West, University West is situated about 400 kilometers southwest from here in Uppsala, the west coast in Sweden, rather near to Gustavs University, I think about 70 kilometers north. We are a university that has about 13,000 students every year, but our doctoral candidates are not so many, about 90, I think. So it's small there. Well,
I think you can. Oh.
Okay, thank you. This is a slide that we use in introductions. I'm too far away from the microphone. Okay. This slide we use in our introductions for new staff, new technicians, new administrators, new lecturers, new professors, and new doctoral candidates. On the left side, you see REL, that is in English, WIL, Work Integrated Learning, that is our profile. In the middle of the picture, you can see how we want to see ourselves, our position in the society as collaborating, mutual collaborating with industry, with public sector and civic society. And in the bottom, it stands something like kunskap i samverkan. That means that we want to focus, coming to research and knowledge production, we want to focus collaboration, working when producing knowledge. On the other side, you see our fundamental values. I will not read them, but every year when we have this, every semester when we have this introduction program, we use this slide. And how often you think there is someone that say, I don't stand for that fundamental values, I don't want them, I go out from this room, or I don't want to be in this university, or I have objections? None. That's correct. So how come that diversity and inclusion is so problematic then? It is obvious that we leave people outside higher education, regardless of their merits, talents, and abilities. And people coming inside the university, it is also obvious that the academic career is not equally possible for everyone. Not in university all over and not at University West, sorry to say. Thank you. But we have something, we have a long list, much longer than this one, to act, to help us act through diversity and inclusion. I think every university in Europe has gender equality plans. We have human resource strategies for researchers. We have plans for broad recruitment, for undergraduate students, graduate students, and broad recruitment for people coming in as our staff. We have, I think, in almost every country, acts and regulations that push diversity and inclusion forward. And we have a lot of organizations that help us and support us in working with diversity and inclusion. SUHF is the Swedish organization for universities. EUA, European University Association, Eurodoc, and we have a lot of unions, student unions and unions for people in our organizations that stand up for these ideas. So we do not succeed, and what must we do then? Yeah, we have, of course, to work for equal terms. And it's twofold for us in the academia, as employers and also as universities, for our students, in our lectures, for our researchers, and as a very important institution in the society. As I said on the second slide, University West want to be an anchor institution. That means that we want to act in the local society at the same time that we're a global actor. We have to act on our duties to take measures to counteract discrimination and promote equal rights and opportunities. We have to develop new guidelines and routines that support what we must do. And when I say guidelines and routines, I mean policies, and I mean we have to take decisions about what guidelines we have to have when we employ people, when we act in society at all. And we have to realize that work with equal terms means working with knowledge, attitudes, values, norms, and behaviors. We have to act culturally, but also structurally. And we have to pay attention to and change non-equal norms and power regimes in order to make the organization more inclusive. So easy to say, and now you think I will say hard to do. But it is not so hard to do. The hard thing is, when doing this, you need to have patience, because we have to change, as my fellow panelists already have said, both culture and structures, both inside the university and outside the university. So this will take time, but we have to take patience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. And yes, thank you to all our panelists. Unfortunately, one of our panelists cannot make it, so we will have this panelist today here all in the room. Before we start maybe the debate, I was wondering if you had any, to start with a good note, any success stories of what you would say has worked as inclusion. Any kind of experience you would have or suggest for others.
That's a good question, but okay. This is not something like auto celebration, but I mean, we worked on that and we're proud of it. But really, we've been doing a good job in Eurodoc recently, really a lot of good work on that. So we just started again inquiring our own unconscious biases. And for example, we start thinking that maybe we were overworking. You know, everyone's just joining Eurodoc because we are used to stay in a research environment. And so you have, I mean, we're very collaborative. We're not so competitive as in the academic environment. So we work together. But at the same time, we are asking each other to do too much because we want to do a lot. And sometimes someone is not making it and we feel guilty to say, I'm not making it. Okay, we discovered we had this problem. So we started trying to change the structure. So we started saying, for example, okay, each one of us has a task and has a backup person. So we try to help each other. And so if any one of us is not making it for any reason, just can ask help and other people will jump in. And that's something that really improved the environment a lot. I mean, I liked Eurodoc very much before, but I like it much more better now because it's, I mean, this is a very small thing. I think this helped a lot everyone with every specific difference, but I think we grew more attentive or sensible to specific issues. So having very precarious life, some of us is more precarious than others, and that is a vulnerability, for example. Having kids is something that makes things more difficult. So we're trying to pay super attention to specific people's needs and help each other. And so the main takeaway is don't feel afraid to say that you're not making it, because we're working as a team. So if you're not making it, we are supporting each other. So I think that's the best example I can bring from around my life, I think. So great.
Yeah, so inspired by your answer, I would also say that I think that the student movement is a success story in terms of improving equality in academia. So from my experience in the student movement, I've seen that, well, it's based on like voluntary basis. So the students that get involved and do this, they do it on their free time, they do it without compensation, and they often do they focus on the things that they want to focus on. And we very often see that they want to focus on matters related to increasing equality, to ensure a more equal and inclusive environment, on how to deal with and prevent harassment and discrimination and so on. And so I think that this is one part of it for sure. And I often see that even in environments where the quantitative equality is lacking, that among the involved students there is like more closer to equality, at least in many ways. And I find that encouraging. And I also see how the student movements at many universities push the universities to be better at their equality work. And I think that this energy is something that will contribute to making academia more equal in the future.
So I think one example I can give is the DEI committee at Scilab Lab. We started organizing a series of events. We called it Raising Our Voices. It was local scientists, researchers, part of the committee, or the friends of the diversity committee. They started talking about their own experiences of inclusion. So one of them talked about imposter syndrome that that person had, or another person talked about ADHD that person had, and then how this didn't help and sometimes helped the academic career. And I think this Raising Our Voices was actually a big success, because the people who actually talked about their experiences felt more connected to people, but also it was open conversation to all institute. So a lot of people found themselves that they're not alone. So they were also more connected, and therefore they felt more included.
Okay, thank you. I think the most important way is to work in structural ways. And I said that brood recruitment is important. And I think it's some kind of key for this. Looking at my own university, it is very few parts in the university that I can say is representative for the population as a whole. And talking about management, it's not at all representative. Talking about our student, it's more representative, but we have a lot to do. But even if I say that we have a lot to do, University West is the best university looking in Sweden. If you look at the representatives from families, students from families that not has own experience from higher education. The interesting thing in that ranking is that University West is in the bottom. I think that's the only ranking list that put the one that succeed best in the bottom. The sad thing about this is that we have a lot to do, even if we are best in that aspect. We have a lot to do. And we must think about counteract these structures that put people with cultural capital and social capital forward and don't look at the abilities and how you perform, so to say. So that is very, very, very important. So broad recruitment is one of the main keys, I think, at least at university level. And I think it is a key also for a different representation in doctoral studies, I'm sure.
Thank you for these examples. And I think it's quite nice that they're not necessarily what we would expect as examples. And I think it's maybe sounds relatively easy examples. So maybe take home methods to keep those, but keep in mind all these good examples before we maybe go into some sadder parts about how much work there is left to do. But now, as an epidemiologist myself, I also wonder how much do we have to do in collecting data on how much lack of diversity and inclusion we have right now, and how do we track progress of what we are doing, especially when keeping in mind what you have just presented, that these issues are not necessarily exactly what we have put in boxes as lack of inclusion. Anyone wants to go on?
Okay, I'll go first. So I came here saying no numbers. Okay, so of course we need numbers. And when we see the seesaw graph, for example, in the She Figures report, and we see that we have 50-50 men and women in the PhD training, and then you get 25% women full professor and 75 male, you start asking yourself what's going wrong and where it's going wrong. So it's important. We have, I think, a lot of data about gender equality. We lack a lot of data on disabilities, for example. That's also because gender is more difficult to hide, but many disabilities can be invisible. And many people choose not to disclose that. And this is something that is not helping us to figure solutions. There is another point, except for number, there is I don't know how to say it, but the immaterial aspects of it, because it's not true that having 50-50 women and men in decision-making bodies means that we are being more inclusive. Because again, it's a matter on how we do things. I met in my life many men that were really into equality and were really aware of their biases and were working hard, are still working hard to do this work towards equality, and many women that are not aware or don't really care about equality. This is not just, being a token and then you're solving problems. So there is a problem about what type of society we're trying to build with this. And this links a lot with what we were discussing yesterday about environmental sustainability and everything we've been discussing these days actually is everything is very interconnected. So what do we want? Because if we are not sure about what is the result we want to achieve, it's really difficult to choose the indicators for measuring change. So that's another question to the debate.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think, of course, everyone probably agrees that we need definitely more research on this, more numbers. I also think we need numbers, but I think we need smart and useful numbers. I can't see any more percentage of men, women. I think it really doesn't help us, because if you look at percentage of men and women in academic environment in different continents, probably Asia is better than Europe. But you cannot just say that, women in Asia in academic world is better treated than men. So I think overall, this diversity type of questions, binary questions, they are not really helping us. I think our questions and numbers should be more reflecting the inclusion and equity more than the diversity itself. Of course, diversity numbers are also important, but I think overall we need a bit more smart numbers that would help us.
Very nice. Jan, you wanted to add something, or?
Okay. I think it's important to have numbers, of course. But thinking about research in this area, you remember that I had these fundamental values. Some people say that it's not important for university to have fundamental values by their own, because automatically that values live in the university by itself. That's not true. The truth is, and they say it is outside the society, the structures, bad cultures and so on is outside society. The bad thing is that we are a part of a reproduction. We reproduce a society. We reproduce the good parts as well as the bad parts. And we must increase our efforts to understand this reproducing mechanisms. So we reproduce in a way that make it possible to be a part of societal change and societal transition in good ways for diversity and inclusion. And I think it's more important to have that kind of research, because nowadays we know that inside the universities is almost the same as outside the universities. We are a part of the society.
Yes, I can also add that, I mean, as academics and as PhD students and researchers and so on, we are trained in asking more questions and trying to get more information all the time. And in general, I think this is a good thing. And I think it's good that we are like teaching society to make informed decisions. But I also think that in this case, we have enough information to act as well, especially when it comes to the gender inequality. We have a lot of numbers, right? So I think we are in a situation where we have enough information to be able to act more than we do, and not fall back into our comfortable instinct of always saying, oh, we need more information about this, we need more information about this before we act. But then also, as mentioned before, I think there are other aspects where we don't have enough information right now, such as disabilities. It's something that's more forgotten, and in those matters, I think, yeah, we should get more numbers and do more research before.
Thank you. I have plenty more questions, but I wonder if anyone else in the room has burning questions that they would rather ask. Yes, does this just work?
Hello, this is a nice catch box. Yes, thank you. I kind of really enjoyed, because I have to be honest, in the beginning when we talked about the equality, and then when the gender equality popped up, I was kind of worrying this political correctness issue would pop in there, because even though we're scientists, we shouldn't be affected, but we know that it's so much affecting it. But I noticed that are really nice, and I kind of really enjoyed it. And then I also dig up some statistics. I'm sorry, I need to give you some numbers. Yeah, the thing is, I'm totally agree with the like. I think the thing is, according to the statistics from 2021-22 in Sweden, at least, the students in like second higher education they're relatively equal in numbers with gender. But the problem is the distribution. I noticed that in technology part, it's 60% more on the male, but in biomedicine and especially in biomedicine, they're like 3 point sometimes more female than male. So that's the fun part. And then especially in social science, it's predominantly female. So my thought is like, and especially in Sweden and Nordic countries, according to what they've been doing and how the societal level, they try so hard to blur out the gender difference when it comes to like free will to choose. So compared to many other countries, Sweden probably has the most like free will to choose what direction you go towards the university. But my fun is like, why we have this kind of weird distribution first, and then now we're pointing more out like in one part of where the females are less represented. My thought is like, is it helpful to actually promote more males towards the field that they are less representative, so that we are not only promoting the females towards here, but probably get some males like goes around the other direction, so that we can get them actually get more of the opportunities. Because I do understand that it's not only the society, but the structures there. So when the young students want to go, they check the statistics of the universities. Males will be say like, oh, there are a lot of males in the technology part. Probably it's for us to go. And it probably also goes for the females too. So probably it's like good that we actually not only promote one part of the females, but also promote the males to go towards more like social science part. But I know that there were males, they can also do quite well in social science. So what do you think about that one? I think we're lacking one part to push the males, also promote them in some of the fields that they are less represented.
Yeah, I can maybe start. And my short answer is yes, I agree. And it is also, as you say, that when you look at technology as one number, then you get that, okay, there's a higher number of males compared to women. But then you can also dig deeper into it and see that within this one number, there are many numbers, right? And there are large differences in different subjects. And for example, among architect students, we see that it's maybe 70-30 women and men. And yeah, we should ask ourselves, like, is this how we want it to be? Or should we actually have some discussion about how to improve the situation there as well? So yeah, in short, I agree.
Yeah, it's a challenge. In my university, it is 30% men, 70% women. And we are a broad university. So we have engineering science, we have nursing, we have teacher education and so on. So it's broad. But I think we have to try to make it another way too, from men entering the women program, so to say. But I think it's some kind of main problem also. We have to do something, but we also have to do something together with actors in society. It's not only us, but we must be a part of the solution, because looking at the Swedish labor market, the number of professional vocations positions is much more differentiation, and it's much more positions for men than for women. So it's much more possible for men to have a place at the labor market with a relatively high salary without higher education. For women, it's often the other way. There are few places in the labor market, and to rise salaries or have better working life conditions, they have to enter higher education. But so we have to act together with the other actors in society, I think.
Thanks. Of course, I agree. But as I said before, I think it's so we should try not to see the problem as sharing power and so taking power away from someone, so fighting for power in some case or for access, because now the problem is about gender roles, especially. This is not something that affects women only. This is a great problem in communication about the issue. This is not women's problem because I would say if I am discriminated against because most of family duties fall on me, that means that my husband has less right to enjoy his family life. So we should try to see the thing from both perspectives. That's why I was saying that we should try to envision a way of doing things, I mean, not only within university, but also outside, that is really fitting the needs of people, real people. Because, I mean, I was lucky. My father had a good job arrangement. So I spent half of my time with my father and half of the time with my mother, and it was great. And it was great for them too, because they enjoyed both all the rights they should enjoy as people, I think. So this is one thing I really care about. It's not, don't think women against men, because it's really not helping. Just let's try to see how we can increase enjoying our life as people. That's the first thing. And about horizontal segregation, I would take a second more. There is a super nice story about software engineering. So in the 60s, when first computers started working at Massachusetts Technology Institute, I think is the correct name, but okay. So software engineers were all women, like secretary. There was a nice study published a few years ago about that, because men found that machines, working with hard machines was the most relevant part, and they were highly paid for that, while programming was something that they thought, so it was far less paid. And they said, it's just something really like knitting. And so it's women's job. After a while, programming grew bigger and bigger and bigger as importance. And for some reason, from the 90s on, that became a man's job, saying that women have not the correct brain structure for doing programming. That was exactly the opposite they were saying 30 years before, just because money distribution has changed. So, and in the 90s, in the United States, the study was, I think for the MIT itself, just studying how things develop. So in the 90s, male kids had a computer in the private room, while female kids, let's say, can access the computer in a shared room or in their brother's room. And this is a way in which society helps people to choose how to segregate in disciplines. So it's, again, it's not something we can solve only within university. We need a broader work outside also. Sorry for taking so much time.
Okay, I think I have a slightly different opinion on this, for the sake of discussion, let's say. I think this is one of the numbers that I don't think is useful. Having 50-50 in every department. I think we should put our effort to make any science, technology, social sciences, any department, any kind of academic life, habitable, comfortable for everyone, and then giving every student in high school, in elementary school, informed decision, chances to understand what the job brings, and let them choose. Maybe we won't get 50-50, we get 60-40, we get 70-30, but as long as we actually make it a habitable place, and we go to the schools and teach, you know, I am a biophysicist, so we have a lot of physics. So we go to high schools, we talk about physics, and we talk about physics gender neutral, right? It's not a men's job, it's a gender neutral job. There are a lot of good examples of men doing physics, women doing physics. And that is what we try to get an informed decision for this. And the numbers, eventual numbers, as long as we can manage this too, I think it doesn't matter so much.
I think it's important to involve and think about the whole school system, not only thinking outside the school system and actors there. I think it's important by two reasons. The first is making people interested in higher education and research, but also, at least in Sweden, we have a big problem that the male merits are much more lower in average than female merits. So in our programs, for example, social work study programs, it is very few male that want to go there, but say it is about 10% that stand in the queue, but they sort out. So in the end, it's only about 5% because they have not enough merits. The female merits are much better. Yes. The characters, the two
Grades.
grades, the grades, yeah. So you have the competition. Yep.
Thank you. There was another question here.
So I have thanks for a very interesting discussion. I have a very general sort of opinion that I want to know from the panel. So when it comes to recruitments or selecting speakers for an events, or how do we make sure that we don't compensate the quality and the qualifications when it comes to as a diversity? How would you make sure that we are having it, the diversity? Of course, we all at this point of time agree that it's very important, but if it is affecting the quality and the qualification of a particular process of recruitment, how would you deal with that? Or it's just an opinion that I want to know from the panel.
Anyone?
Yeah.
You want to go?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay. All right. So in terms of recruitment, I know that at my home university, when there was this increased efforts in improving the equality, there was discussions regarding this, and it ended up in some sort of solution that you want to make sure that when you announce a position and open it up for applicants, you want to make sure that among the applicants you have within a range of an pretty equal distribution, and then you don't look at it when you do the assessments. But if you announce a position and you get like 20% of one gender and 80% of another, then you don't move forward with the process. You need to draw back the position and think about, okay, why did we end up in this situation? So that's one way to deal with it.
Just to follow up, but what if it in this 80% you have qualified, and what you are looking for, if you have in this 80%, is it just like, is it for bringing the diversity level equal? Do you retract the advertisement and then repost it? Or
I mean, yes, you will probably have great candidates both among the 80% and among the 20%, but you don't want in the end to be making a decision of which candidates you pick for the position based on gender. You want it to be purely meritocratic, and you need to do something to change the status quo of in this case then most often recruitment. So you need to make some decision at some point, and I think that's a pretty good place to do it to avoid the more tricky situations. And of course, if you're a good candidate, you're allowed to apply again, right?
Thank you. I think one way to do this is to look over your appointment rules and procedures and follow it up. So don't, if you have old appointment procedures around year after year after year, look at them, try to change them, figure out what competences do you really need, what competences do you want to measure, what do you need from the people that will work together with you, and change the procedure and follow it up. And I'm sure that it's good for diversity and for the production.
Okay, so I think, so what's quality? Again, big questions. I think there is, of course, okay, when I make a list for choosing people for some things, I always ask myself, can I make a different choice? Because maybe I cannot. Sometimes only male people really can do that job. Okay, okay, we do that. Some other times I discover that maybe I'm using some bias. And so I try to question if I can change something. And then there is an issue about opportunities. Because sometimes, I mean, I think that for some things, quality comes with talent, from talent. Someone is really talented and everything comes easy, let's say. But for other people, quality comes with practice. And if you never have the chance to practice, to be in places, so if I never had a panel, okay, if previously in my life, now I wouldn't be so comfortable as I am. But the first time I did, someone knew that I was not going to be very good, but they asked me to do that in any case, betting on my ability to learn from practice and get quality for the future. So it's also making investments of people. And as a teacher also, I mean, I do many jobs. I did a PhD without being paid. So I was teaching in the afternoon for making a living. But so you don't really look at where people are. You look how much they can grow up in the process. And that's also a way of measuring quality, because you can have a very good person at the beginning that really doesn't care about improving. And I don't know if that's really quality in the end.
I think my line of comments would be actually in line with this. So first thing, I really think if there is, but you open a position or you select a speaker, you want to invite a speaker, if your pool is more or less balanced, I don't think you actually compromise from the quality. But if you get this case that you have 80-20%, the call is wrong. Clearly, call is somehow biased. If there's an unbiased call, the language is proper, I think you get more or less a balanced application, balanced speakers. And when you're recruiting one person, I think the quality, success, these things are mentioned so much, but I think the definition of it, like, you know, what you really need, that was really good, I think. What you really need doesn't mean that, you know, if you're opening a assistant professor position, maybe publications might not be the only criteria that you're looking at, because that might be completely wrong. It could skew everything. So I think the definition of success is really, really important, that it's important that eventually what you need. And eventually also this quality should be described, not only success, but the qualities should be described. You know, if you're selecting a speaker for a conference, I also heard this, you know, I'm in the committees, I'm selecting my PhD students, postdocs. First, I think it's a good idea to have a panel to select people so that unconscious biases are somehow canceled. But then you hear these comments of quality. Yeah, we can invite this speaker, but this person gives boring talks, not so funny. It's like, we don't want funny people. We are not running a show business here. It's for scientific conference. You know, the quality that you're after is science. If it's science, you have to pick science. You shouldn't pick showmanship, right? But I think these qualities are somehow unconscious biases are always kicking in, so that we have this illusion that we're actually compromising from quality. But I don't think we compromise from the quality. We have to make the calls right, good language, and a good informed decision panels. I think we wouldn't compromise anything.
There is, of course, a problem with tokenism. But this is, again, doing things because you want to show you're doing without really caring about what you're doing. So if you think you will solve the problem just putting a woman everywhere and overwhelming that poor woman that needs to do every panel, every committee, everything, you're not helping equality. You're just discriminating again and more on the basis that you're pinkwashing your, yeah, exactly. It can be pinkwashing or whatever other color you want to choose, because this happens with everybody. So if you're just trying to do things to show off, that's not good. In any case, that's it.
Okay, we have one last question. Hopefully it will link to short answers.
Hopefully, yes. When listening, I'm thinking about a word.
You can hold it
I
closer to.
hold it closer.
Yeah.
Now you hear what I say. Thinking about equal opportunities and this thing that after PhD studies, the biggest gap actually is when after your defense and then to have an academic career. And it is this, I think it has to do with what we value. And maybe we have to change in academia the view of what we value as regards to what is meriting, and thinking about academic housekeeping and its distribution. It's a thing, I agree, it's not that we should have 50-50 or everything, but we should see what makes the whole academic work go forward. And sightings and what we think is meriting, we have to make it wider, I think, and distribute it in another way. And so that is my question. What do you think about the academic housekeeping?
Anyone wants to answer?
It's important, very important. Thank you. And it's also important to think about who got credit for what in the seminar, in the research group, who stand up and get credit for the breakthroughs and so on. I was talking a little bit earlier about software programming. It is a computer language named ADA, ADA. That's the name of Ada Lovelace. That was a famous mathematician in the 19th century. She didn't get credit of almost anything then. Now she at least have this computer language, but it's a long way to go we're still a long way to go. Very important. Thank you.
So this helps me to bring up another thing that it really matters to me, and that's also what we think it's prestigious in academia, because spoilery things, but it's okay. So many women don't accept jobs in academia that are not research intensive, because that means that we are lesser important in everything we're doing. Men have lesser troubles in accepting jobs in academia or whatever. For women, just research intensive, because you need to be the super best, because if not, you're just trying it to just let's try better. Just this type of condescending attitude. I add something else about this, that I wanted to ask the question about the doctoral training panel before, but I'll say that now. There are lots of people that leave academia because they're forced or because they want to, and they disappear. They are not researchers anymore. They are not PhD anymore. No one cares about them, but they still can play a huge role in bringing academic work forward, disseminating it to the general public, doing a lot of work that intensive researchers can't do because they have no time. They teach, and not only in university, also in high schools. And that's super important. But we don't care about them because that's not prestigious enough. And that's super stupid. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, I also agree with what has been mentioned, that especially this sentiment that we need to broaden our perspectives about what we value in academia, and not just that the ones that are first or last authors on the highest impact publications are the best, and the people that, like, if we only had those people in our departments, then not much would get done, right? So we need to broaden this idea and look at what type of academia do we want in general, like in terms of working environment, in terms of valuing different types of contributions, and so many more aspects, right? And I think that if we do these type of right things, we will provide more equal opportunities as well, because we make academia a place for more people. So, and this also goes a bit to what you were saying before about how we maybe shouldn't focus on the numbers, but rather do right things. And I agree, but I also think that if we go that way, we will also end up with the numbers as a consequence in the end.
Yeah, I think my final comments would also be in this line. I think we should change our mindset, but also definitions, the language. I think we should get out of this, housekeeping requires nurturing. Maybe we don't need to talk about aggressive terms, competitiveness, but mostly nurturing and taking care of each other. Especially as you go more senior, you should also think about nurturing more and more.
Thank you very much. I would like, Bill, did you have something to say? No. I would like to thank the panel.
1 second.
No, please, because we have a 10 minutes walk to the restaurant for lunch.
Okay.
So yes, I have something to say. Thank you to the panel. Back to Constance.